I stood there in a beautiful short dress, checking myself out in the mirror. It was bold for me, a little more daring than usual. The white fabric hugged my body in all the right places, and the hem barely brushed above my knees. I felt confident, even if a small part of me was nervous about how my stepdad would react. Just as I was adjusting the straps, I heard the door open. I turned around, and there he was, walking into the room without his shirt on, as usual, completely unaware of how his presence immediately shifted the atmosphere. My heart skipped a beat, and for a second, I completely froze. His chest was toned, his muscles defined from his daily workouts, and I couldn't help but look. I mean, who wouldn't? He was standing there, casually, completely at ease. But I wasn't. I felt my cheeks flush, my mind racing. The moment felt wrong, but it was also undeniably intense. I tried to gather my composure, but before I could say anything, my hand jerked in the wrong direction, and I accidentally knocked over my glass of wine. The deep red liquid spilled across the front of my white dress, and I gasped in horror as the stains spread out, ruining the fabric. Oh my God! I panicked, grabbing a napkin, trying to blot the mess away. He raised an eyebrow, still calm as ever. Well, looks like that wine isn't going to come out that easily. He walked over to me, his eyes never leaving the mess I had created. I can't believe I did that, I mumbled, trying to salvage whatever was left of my dress. He glanced at me, a hint of amusement in his eyes. You know, I could help. Just take the dress off, and I'll wash it for you. It's probably the easiest way to get rid of the stain. I felt my stomach drop. What? Come on, he said nonchalantly. I'm sure you don't want to walk around like that. I'll take care of the stain, just take it off. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to refuse, to brush it off as just another weird suggestion, but something in his voice made me hesitate. Why was he so calm about it? He didn't seem flustered at all. The air between us felt thick now, and I wasn't sure if it was my imagination or if he really was as relaxed as he seemed. I quickly glanced down at my dress, at the stain now taking over the fabric. Underneath this, there's nothing, I said awkwardly, not meeting his eyes. He smirked slightly, clearly not bothered. Then I guess I'll just turn around, give you some privacy. But you really should have thought about that before wearing a dress like that. My breath caught in my throat. Did he just say that? Why did his words feel like they held more weight than just an innocent comment? I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks as I stared at the floor, trying to ignore the tension building up between us. The words hung in the air, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had just shifted. He turned around, giving me space, but the entire room still felt charged with unspoken energy. And I realized, in that moment, that things weren't going to be the same anymore. I stood frozen for a moment, unsure whether to remove the dress or wait for him to leave the room. The seconds felt like hours as I debated what to do. His voice, so calm, still echoed in my head. I tried to shake it off, but I couldn't. The air in the room felt thick with a tension that had never been there before. I glanced at him, his back turned, and I couldn't help but notice how his muscles moved as he shifted slightly, preparing to leave me some space. My eyes involuntarily followed the movement of his body, and I immediately regretted it. I wasn't supposed to be looking at him this way. He was my stepdad. But my mind couldn't stop racing, and my body seemed to have a mind of its own. There was something about the way he held himself, so at ease, so confident, that made me feel small. But not in the bad way. No, it wasn't a sense of inferiority. It was something else. A strange kind of pull that I couldn't explain. Maybe it was the way the tension between us had shifted. Maybe it was the way I felt so out of control. Or maybe it was the simple fact that I had never seen him like this, so vulnerable, so calm, and yet so captivating. Okay, I'll just take it off, I muttered, unsure whether I was talking to him or just trying to convince myself. I slowly began to undo the straps of my dress, my fingers trembling as I tried to stay composed. But the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Here I was, standing in front of my stepdad, about to take off my dress so he could wash it. I felt exposed. I felt awkward. And yet, there was a small part of me that wanted to push through the discomfort. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was the strange, magnetic force between us that made me act in ways I would never normally consider. The dress slid off my body, and I caught a glimpse of his reaction. His eyes flickered back toward me for just a second before he quickly turned away again, like he wasn't quite sure what to do with what he had just seen. I quickly grabbed a towel from the nearby rack to cover myself, but the damage was already done. My heart was racing, and I couldn't look at him without feeling like everything had changed. It was as if the simple act of taking off my dress had shattered some invisible barrier between us. "You don't have to do this," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I'll just wash it myself. It's not a big deal." He stayed silent for a moment, and I could feel his eyes still lingering on me, even though he was trying not to show it. I said, "I'll take care of it. You go ahead and relax." There it was again. His calmness. His insistence on controlling the situation as if he had the right to, like he had the final say. And for some reason, I didn't resist. I let him take control of the moment, even though something inside me told me I shouldn't. I turned away, still wrapped in the towel, and pretended to busy myself with the mirror. But my mind was anything but calm. What was happening? What had just transpired? Was he really just going to wash my dress, or was there more to it? Before I could process anything, I heard him shift again. I turned my head slightly and saw him walking toward the laundry room. He didn't say another word. It was like he knew exactly how to handle the situation, like nothing had changed, even though everything felt different. The silence between us was deafening, and I stood there, still unsure of what to do with myself. Part of me felt foolish for feeling so shaken. It was just a dress. Just a simple accident. But it didn't feel that way. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I had underestimated the effect the situation would have on me. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, my heart pounding in my chest. I wanted to leave the room, escape the strange tension that hung in the air, but I couldn't move. I was stuck. I had never felt so vulnerable, so exposed. The longer I stayed in the room, the more I realized that I was craving something I didn't fully understand. He came back into the room a few moments later, holding my dress in his hands. It was perfectly clean, as if nothing had ever happened. "All set," he said, his voice steady, like he hadn't just witnessed something that was anything but ordinary. I took the dress from him, our fingers brushing for a brief moment. That tiny touch sent a jolt through me, and I felt my breath catch in my throat. But I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. "Thanks," I said, trying to sound normal, like nothing had changed. But it was impossible. The way he was looking at me, the way he was standing there, so close, so calm, it was all too much. He nodded but didn't move. I didn't know what to do. We stood there for a moment, neither of us speaking. The silence was deafening, and all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. Then, finally, he spoke. "You know, if you ever need help with anything else, just ask." His voice was soft, almost too soft, and it made me feel something I couldn't describe. His words hung in the air between us, thick and heavy. I nodded quickly, trying to ignore the strange sensation that was crawling up my spine. "Okay, I will." And with that, he turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone, still holding the dress in my hands, still trying to piece together everything that had just happened. The air was still charged with the electricity of what we had just shared, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us.